Well, hello, audience. Again, here we go with another fantastic show today with a wonderful guest. I'll tell you about him in a minute, but let me ask you a question. How many of you in the audience, raise your hands, I know I can see you and hear you, are Dallas Cowboy fans? Okay, that's number one question. Number two, how many of you would like to sit down and just have a casual discussion with one of the top NFL players? And number three, would any of you enjoy hearing from one of the greatest Dallas Cowboy fullbacks to talk about how he went from the field to computer science field? Isn't that interesting? Well, stay tuned.
Welcome to our podcast, Doing It Right. This podcast reveals authentic stories from successful leaders doing it right. It's about their journey to become a leader, their choices, motivations, and lessons. In essence, how they built successful personal brands. Your host is Valerie Sokolosky, author of 8 leadership books and nationally known as an authority on executive presence and personal branding. Let's get started. Here's Valerie.
All right. Well, today I have the one and only Timmy Newsome with me today, to talk about what it was like when he was playing fullback for the Dallas Cowboys and now what he's doing with his company, Newtech Business Solutions. So welcome, Timmy. I'm so glad you're with me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
You know, I have to tell you and the audience what it was like when I met you in person. So the audience knows, I've told them many times, that I always have a pre-interview, hopefully in person if it's someone in Dallas.
Right.
And here's what I want you to know, audience. I walked into his office. Well, I didn't walk into his office. First, a big reception area, right? And so they called Timmy Newsome, and in came Timmy Newsome, just quietly, calmly, stuck his hand out, shook his hand with the big smile that you can see on his face. And we walked down, I don't know how many halls to get into his office. We sat down, and what was to be about a 30-minute discussion was 2 hours. Now, this is somebody famous. He didn't have to do that, Timmy. You didn't have to spend that much time. Why did you spend that much time with me?
I just enjoyed the conversations and the questions that you were asking me and the information that you were able to gather from meeting me and getting to know me better.
Well, and I did.
Yes.
And that's what we're going to talk about today.
Wonderful. Look forward to it.
So, first of all, I want to congratulate you because you were just inducted into the North Carolina Sports Hall of Fame.
Thank you.
Tell us what that means to you.
Well, it means a lot because it's where I was born and raised. And it also is emblematic of what we did as a football team. We went undefeated 2 years in a row. And so it was a team effort, and I was so elated that my teammates could share in that moment. And so it was so special, and my family got to share it as well. I think my brothers were more excited about it than I was.
So how many people were there to clap and smile
I would say
at you?
Just under 900.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes, just under 900.
Wow.
Yes.
Now, Timmy, you had on a red jacket. I just had to laugh when you sent me the picture.
Yes.
Would you tell us about the red jacket?
Well, my Winston-Salem State University school's colors are red and white. And I just thought it would be really neat to wear the jacket that my teammates and I wore to be inducted into the Winston-Salem State University Sports Hall of Fame. And so when I found out that I was going to be inducted, I asked the executive director, would it be okay if I wore my red sports coat along with my teammates to show team unity? And so they agreed to allow me to do that.
Well, it definitely stood out.
Oh, it does.
that was really great.
Yes.
Congratulations. That's quite an accomplishment.
Thank you.
As so many. So you enjoyed 9 successful seasons in the NFL with the Dallas Cowboys. You scored 30 touchdowns. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's right. 30
NFL
touchdowns.
player.
Yes.
19 on the ground.
Yep.
11 on receptions.
Yes.
What was it like when that ended?
Wow. I had such a wonderful run. And I played a long time, longer than I had anticipated, to be honest with you. Yes. A running back's career is only around 4 years. And so I was able to play 9. And but still, when it was over, there was some disappointment in knowing that I would never experience the kind of camaraderie that I did with my teammates again. I mean, we see each other occasionally, but what we had during my career was just purely magical. And so that's what I miss the most, even to this day.
And how many people do you stay in touch with fairly regularly?
I would say at least 10 to 12 of them.
Do you?
Yes. Yes. We could go have lunch every now and then, or meet someplace to have a conversation. And the Dallas Cowboys are very good about ensuring that we get together in certain times of the year. So it's more often than what one would think.
Which is good.
It is. It
you
really
know,
is.
old friends are always good, solid friends.
Yes, yes.
It's good to meet new ones, but...
And we get to tell all of these really tall stories, and the further removed we are from the sport, the more creative the stories get.
Give us a story. Tell us a story.
Well, there's always a slight exaggeration how good we were.
Like the fish that
That's
grows.
right. That's
Yeah,
exactly
okay.
right. And so, and then we talk about experiences, not so much during game day, but just things we did in training camp and the kind of fun we had while we were working so hard for those 2 hours twice a day for 6 weeks.
What was that like?
Well, for us, it was fairly unique in that we would always travel to Thousand Oaks, California.
Right.
And it's beautiful weather. In the 10 years I was out there, it only rained once. And so we were able to get a lot of work in, but still we were able to have conversations that have nothing to do with football. And we got to stay together for 6 weeks. And our dorm life was like 4 guys to a room.
Really?
Yes. Yeah. 4 guys to a room. And you would think that would be a little complicated and frustrating, but I loved it.
You did?
Yes, I loved it. I thought it was the greatest thing to be able to share those moments with guys that large in one room.
Well, since the days, you were asked an interesting question you shared with me recently, and I'm going to ask the same question. And that is, what's one thing in sports that you didn't know then that you wished you had known?
Well, I think the thing I missed the most is that while I was playing, I wasn't necessarily assertive enough. I pretty much just did what coaches asked me to do and did it very well. Occasionally, I probably should have gone to Coach Landry and say, you know what, Coach? I think it would be a really good idea if I carry the ball just a little bit more, or I can be used in a different way than the way I was used. But in the heat of the moment for those 9 years, you just kind of went along with whatever they decided to do on my behalf. But being a little bit more assertive, I think I probably should have taken more stock in and have done that.
There's a lesson in that in life, isn't there?
It is. It really is.
How does that play out?
Well, there's always a very fine line in asking for something and being able to produce. And so if I asked for it and it didn't work out, then the aftermath can be somewhat disastrous.
I would think.
And so in the back of my mind, if I had asked for something like that and all of a sudden I had an injury that would keep me sidelined for a few weeks, so they would put in these packages and all of a sudden I'm not available. And so I have to be very careful about asking for something like that, because if it doesn't work out, then it creates frustration.
At least.
Yes. At the very least.
At least.
Yes.
You know, Timmy, I'm going to throw some questions at you, and
Okay.
I just want you to come back with whatever comes out of your beautiful head.
Okay.
Okay. Your mom and a husky.
husky.
A
Yes.
husky.
Yes. Well, it was a great experience. It's a small town. The population was around 5,000. My mother was a school teacher. My father was an automobile mechanic and a farmer.
And both?
Yes.
How do you do both?
Well, we would work mostly in the summer for the farming, and then the automobile mechanics piece he would do pretty much year round. But he would take time off over the summer months, and someone else would come help do the mechanic piece for him. So we were able to get both in. So I was always busy. There was always something to do when I was a child, and even growing up through high school.
And how many siblings?
I have 5 brothers and sisters, and I'm next to the baby.
Oh, and you weren't babied, probably.
No, not at all. Not at all. I got away with a lot, though.
Well, what was it like as a child?
It was a wonderful experience because my parents lived on one street, and my grandmother and uncles lived just across from what separated us by an apple tree and grapes. And there was a path that ran between it. And so it was wonderful to be in that environment and grow up and spend time with cousins and aunts and uncles and things of that nature. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
Yes.
And you said the name is an Indian name.
It's an Indian name.
Say it again.
A husky.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah. A husky.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Another word, expectations.
You know, the expectations in my household growing up were enormous, but it wasn't a pressurized type of expectations. It was more environmental and what you could witness. So I had older cousins who were doing certain things with their lives. And so I got to see how they progressed through life, and their expectations were pretty high. And so I was able to emulate some of the things that they were doing. I'll give you an example. My oldest cousin played basketball at the University of Indiana for the Hoosiers. And so I got to witness his maturation of going from high school and going out to Indiana to play basketball. Mm-hmm. His brother played football at Duke and went to Duke on a football scholarship. So I got to see him do that. And then my 2 brothers, I had one brother who played at a pretty high level in high school and decided not to play at all in college. And my other brother played at a high level in high school and got to go to UNC Chapel Hill and play football as a freshman.
That's such great information about just family. When we talked, Timmy, you told me about watching other kids and having aspirations for, you said, the white kids. Mm-hmm. Tell us that story.
Well, I was very fortunate in some ways because, first of all, that landmark ruling in Brown versus the Board of Education happened in 1954. And the Supreme Court ruled unanimously that the separate but equal doctrine was unconstitutional. And that ruling came down on May 17th, 1954, which is the day I was born, a few years later. So my parents felt it was necessary for me to go to an all-white school at a very early age. Mm. And it was the most eye-opening and wonderful experience I think I've ever had, because when I got there, sure, there were some teachers and classmates that may not have wanted me there, but what was interesting was I was determined not to go back to an all-black school. And so I found a way to fit in. I found a way to get along. I didn't make any waves about my blackness or anything of that nature. I just wanted to be a part of a culture that I knew nothing about. And it was so wonderful to experience on a daily basis. So from 7:30 in the morning to 3:30 in the afternoon, I got to experience another culture. And then after that, I would go home and be around friends that I've, known all my life at that stage in my life. And so to ensure that I got what I needed from a Black perspective, my mother, who was a school teacher, would teach me Black history. After I did my normal studies, she would put on a film or a film strip and have me learn about W.E.B. Du Bois, Frederick Douglass, Mary McLeod Bethune, Paul Robeson, those kind of famous people of the Black perspective. And so I had the best of both worlds and loved it.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yes.
Where are we today?
Good question. When I look at places I go, I don't see an integrated society in the sense of education. We've gone back from, in some ways, of separating ourselves. Although all of the vestiges of racial inequality have been largely dismantled because of the laws, there's still this divide that I see. And I can't really explain why that is, except for the fact that it's not where it needs to be, but it's a lot better than it was.
So if you were talking to any minority teenager, what would you give as a piece of advice to make a difference?
Just stay colorblind.
I love that.
So when I meet people, they may see me as someone who is African American or Black. But when I start the conversation, my goal is to make them see me just like they see themselves. And we have the same shared experience and experiences and the same aspirations. And so very seldom do I discuss what color I am. I talk about substance.
Yes.
But I don't spend my time talking about color because, I mean, let's face it, I'm part white and I'm part Cherokee Indian.
Really?
And I'm also part Black.
Well, that's interesting.
So I tell people I'm a mutt.
Have you ever had the ancestry?
I have not. I only go on the environment to which I was raised. My mother's mother was half Cherokee Indian.
Is that
Yes.
right?
And on my father's side, there were some white cousins.
Fascinating.
So it was a really interesting way to see the world as a child.
One of the things that you shared as a teachable point of view is exactly what you're saying. Have more substance than style.
Precisely. I think that carries a person a long way more than anything else. And what I normally would mean by that is anytime you're faced with challenges, it's your substance that's going to be sustaining and everlasting. The style will come and go, but it's the substance that's going to carry you through those tough times. And having that substance is going to get you through the times that you may think are hopeless. But as long as you stay true to those convictions, over time, things will tend to work themselves out.
Is there any story behind that where a substance has taken you through, and what
Sure.
did that look like?
I'll give you an example. When I entered Winston-Salem State University as a freshman, the first thing I asked was, where was the locker room? Well, we don't have one. What do you mean you don't have a locker room? I mean, where does a football team dress? Well, you dress in your dorm room. Okay. All right, well, show me where the weight room is. Well, we don't really have one of those either. Okay, you don't have a weight room? No, we don't have a weight room. So then I tried to figure out, I said, okay, they don't have these amenities. How am I supposed to win?
No kidding.
You know, what am I supposed to do to be successful? And what I realized was, it's not the material things that was going to sustain me. It's the relationships I built with my teammates who could overlook those things and focus on what was really important. And that was getting up every day, listening to the coaches, going out to practice, and being proficient at the things we were asked to do. And sooner or later, I forgot about the fact that we didn't have those amenities that were necessary, because it wasn't necessarily in and of itself a predictor of whether or not we won or lost. It's how we thought about each other inside. And so that first year we went 4-6 without any equipment, anything to cling on. That following year we went undefeated.
No kidding.
With the same environment in terms of equipment. And so it was that moment that I realized that all those material things weren't necessarily important. But here's the thing. Once we proved to university officials that we could win without them, we were able to get all of what we needed and then some. And so that's the beauty of it, is finding a way to drown out all that noise and all that complaining, because it's easy to complain, but just focus on the mission. And the mission was to try to be productive and successful on the football field each and every Saturday, to where we could be relevant enough to demand the things that we always felt like we deserved. And so that's what we were able to do.
Timmy, I think I'd like to just play that one piece over and over and over again. Very wise. And can you take that to today in business? Because we're having the Great Resignation. We're having people that still are pretty much resigned to work from home, even be willing to quit their job to do that. I mean, it's such a different environment. So the disciplines, the things you just talked about, how does that apply, or should it apply, to the business environment, particularly as leaders? That's who my audience is, people who are leaders and emerging leaders.
Well, Coach Landry used to always say adversity is not nearly as important as how you handle it.
That's good.
And so whenever in business I'm faced with those challenges, I just harken back on the days of my time at Winston-Salem State University and say, okay, well, what resources do I need in business to be successful? And if I don't have those resources, what are the other things I can do to counteract that and stay positive in the things that are most important? And so that experience in college has led me to a 30-year career in business, and it has not been perfect. There has been peaks and valleys along the way. There have been times I'm wondering, what in the world am I doing? And why am I doing it?
But 30 years.
But 30 years later, I'm still in the game. And that's the important thing. As long as you're still in the game, you have a chance.
That's another teachable point of view. That's super good.
Yes.
I want to go back on that very thing to how in the heck did you go from running on the field to running as the CEO of your company? And tell us about Newtech Business Solutions.
Sure. Well, it started in college. And because of the facilities and the way that they were not present, I realized that I might need to kind of switch my focus to be more academic oriented. And so my ambition initially was to major in health and physical education.
Oh, that would make sense.
Right. But I didn't think it was going to be in my best interest long term to do that at Winston-Salem State. So during my freshman year, I was in the registration line beginning to register for classes. And there was a guy in front of me, and we had struck up a conversation. And, you know, he was asking me how I was doing, and I told him I was playing football. And I said, you know, I don't think I'm going to play very long. He says, why? I said, well, it's just very frustrating. And I'm going to have to think of something else to do because I need to switch my major. And I asked him what he was majoring in. So he told me and said, okay. So by the time I got to the registrar's desk, I changed my major. Now,
to what?
I changed it from health and physical education to business administration and minored in computer science.
Computer science.
Right.
Amazing.
But let's put that in context. Health and physical as a health and physical education major is a very difficult major in colleges. It's not easy. It's a lot of science involved. So it wasn't that much of a stretch to switch to business administration and computer science. So from there, I just started focusing on something that had nothing to do with sports, that was purely focused on the technical aspects of business and in the computers, which was still in its infancy. You know, Bill Gates and Steve Jobs were in their garages at that time learning the nuances of computers and the software industry. Mm-hmm. And so by the time I graduated, I was ready to go out and to do something different other than sports. Well, I got drafted. And so I come to Dallas, play out the season, and Gil Brandt, who's the player personnel director, asked me what I wanted to do in the off season. And I said, well, I'd like to be a computer programmer. It was what I was trained to do in college. He says, okay, well, I'll help you find a job. And so he did. And so my job was to write computer software for financial institutions, specifically automated teller machines, those ATM machines that people now enjoy. Uh-huh. And so it was a very new industry at that time. So we wrote software for it. And I did that my whole career from 8 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon, from January until June. That's what I was doing. And after 3 o'clock, I would drive over to the training facility and work out. And so that's kind of how I was able to stay involved in the technology sector.
That's amazing. What exactly does Newtech do?
Well, what we do today is we sell voice over IP telephone systems and software. Mm-hmm. And so we take the telephone system and we make it more interactive to give people a more creative experience with the customer. So someone, for example, calls into a location, it pops up on the screen who that customer is. Mm-hmm. So there's a database with that customer's information on it. That database could be either a Microsoft product or Salesforce or some other CRM solution that they've already entered information about that customer. So we take that software and we take that phone and merge the two.
I see.
So that's what we do.
So what would be one of your kinds of companies that you've worked with?
Any company that has to use a phone, which is almost everybody.
Oh, that's a good target audience.
That's right. Anywhere from a two-person business all the way up to a few thousand. We have what's called a call center that we can install software into a business's environment where they can man telephone calls into the thousands. So it just depends.
And 30 years?
And 30 years later, we're still in the game.
That's such an interesting story.
Yes.
Let me go back to some words.
Okay.
All right. Habits.
They can be good or bad. I like to think that I've got good habits in the sense that I try to have a routine every day. I get up in the morning at 4 o'clock.
Oh.
And I try to work out, get my workout in. And whatever I do, it needs to be done by 8. And that's every day. And so doing that puts me into a nice frame of mind about how I need to conduct my day and get it going. So that's very important for me.
4 o'clock. That's discipline.
Yes.
Joyful.
Being around friends. There's nothing more rewarding than being around friends and family. Although I don't see my family a lot in person, we speak often over the phone. And so that's what brings me joy. And of course, having that time together is really important.
And you take time with friends, I know.
Oh, yes.
Which is, we should.
Yes.
Excellence.
It's doing things consistently over and over again and feeling like you've improved on a day-to-day basis. I've always taken things that I've wanted to do and just take little baby steps and have patience. For me, it's about having patience about doing things. So that's what that's about.
That so resonates because I've done that with the podcast for 4 years.
Yes.
Step by step, baby steps, excellence.
Yes.
Homework, research.
That's exactly right.
And that's actually one of your teachable points of view. Do something better every day, which is great. Creative.
I've always enjoyed getting out of my comfort zone. Give you an example. When I played football, the most I'd ever run was 2 miles. In 2014, I had a friend that I was on the treadmill at one of the athletic clubs, and I was walking and running, and he said, "I think you can do a 5K." I said, "Well, okay, well maybe, but that's not a lot. I'm going to get out of bed and go do a 5K, and it's going to take me more time to get out of bed to get there than to do it." I said, "Let's, set our sights a little higher." He says, "Well, let's try a half marathon." And so I said, "Okay." So I started training for a half marathon. And my first half marathon was late 2014. And then I did a few, and then I decided to do a marathon. And so I went from a half marathon to a marathon. And my friends call me crazy, but I love it. It's my time to go out and just run, be by myself, to think. I'd solve a whole lot of problems running 9-10 miles on a weekend. It's so wonderful, and it's so refreshing.
That to me is just so fascinating, because to say that you solve a lot of problems while you're running, and you're not the first runner that has told me that. I'll have to try it. Okay. Bored.
I am rarely bored. I do so much, and I've got so many things on my plate that boredom is not part of my vocabulary. I'm constantly trying to do new things. For example, I was never a swimmer until the pandemic hit. And so we shut down, and I said, okay, I'm going to learn to swim as soon as we open up again. And so I've been learning to swim ever since, and I'm pretty good at it.
Really?
Yeah,
You like it?
I love it. It's very therapeutic. It's very relaxing. It's quiet in the water. And so now that I'm able to swim, one of these days, I am going to do a mini triathlon.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say that. I can't imagine, but I can imagine. If you say you're going to do that, I believe you.
Yes.
So, tell me a joke.
A joke. Interesting. Man. I don't really know jokes. I can't think of one. You've got me stumped.
I got you stumped.
Yes.
I can't imagine being around all those other cowboys and friends, and you're not telling jokes, huh?
Well, my teammates were better at it than I am. Yeah, I really don't know any jokes.
Well, then I'll take it here. What makes you laugh?
Oh gosh, I can find humor in just about anything. But I would have to say the one thing that I laugh about more than anything else is probably watching situation comedy on TV and looking at people do things that they shouldn't have done that they can laugh about. And I guess that's what kind of is more intriguing to me than anything else. It's just watching them do things, and they make fun of themselves because they're not taking themselves too seriously. And it's kind of funny to see.
And thank goodness we've got some really good, funny sitcoms. Yeah. What's the silliest thing you've ever done?
The silliest thing I've ever done. I would probably say when I was in Maui, I took a trip to Hana, and I said, Lord, if you ever let me get out of here, I promise you, I won't make this mistake again. So I took this car.
Rode to Hana in Hawaii. Yeah.
And I was terrified.
Were you?
Oh, just terrified. And I said, if you ever let me out of here, I won't ever do anything this stupid again.
I've heard that. Yeah. I haven't done it, but I've heard that. Timmy, is there anything you want to ask me?
I think you've covered everything.
Well, it has been a pleasure. I have tried to get you for a long time Thanks to my friend Delta Emerson,
Oh,
who
yes.
knew
Wonderful
you.
person. Wonderful.
It's not easy to get people that are so famous. And here's the deal. You're so real
I try to be.
and authentic.
Yeah, thank you.
And that's
Thank
what
you.
the show is about.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Phil, so much for having me.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, sir. And I wish
All
you
right.
all God's blessings and more, 30 more years at least with Newtech Business Solutions.
At least. That'll put me over 100, but that's
At
fine.
least. still running.
Yeah.
All right, audience. What a great interview, right? I want you to come back next week and you'll have another great guest. And until then, stay authentic, stay real, because people will love you for that. There just aren't many around these days. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening. To receive Valerie's voice, free monthly leadership tips, and to learn more about her leadership programs and coaching, visit her website, valerieandcompany.com. Next week, we'll be here again to inspire, engage, and equip you with teachable points of view from successful leaders who have been doing it right. Until then, lead authentically.